All right. I was convinced into this. This is Pampas Railroads. It's the first of my forays into a win some games game. And the first thing you notice when you look at this, and I suppose almost any of their games, is the box, is the components are nowhere near what one would expect for something that sells for a reasonable amount of money. I picked this up used for I think $35, and definitely that lack of good quality components is immediately kind of a turnoff for me. I hate to say it because, you know, I love a game for the game. And in some ways this looks, I've never played it before. The rules are something that, you know, it's only 4 pages of rules. However, it sort of seems to distill the 18XX experience into something really, really tiny. I don't know if it's going to play out tiny. It looks like it will. It looks like it's maybe an hour or two game, to tell you the truth. So, I mean, with that first turn off as to, oh my God, I paid so much for this. It didn't even come with crayons. I had to supply my own markers. At least it has cash. Some games don't have money. But, you know, it really feels almost like I have a print and play game here. Except I didn't have to go through the work of, I don't know what. I mean, you know, I've got this sheet here which I think is supposed to, by the rules, it looks like I'm supposed to mark these things off. I'm not going to do that, obviously. I'm using a die to mark the dividends 0 through 9. After 9 rounds, well, the 9th round of dividends seems to be the end of the game. But there is something very, very compelling about this rule set itself. And actually, the fact of this, and I watched a video on it, I picked up Chicago Express for this, which I believe is derived from a Winsome game. And I've put some bids in on other games of this company, because I do think that they're incredibly interesting looking games. Now, I haven't played one yet, and we're going to get a feel for it here. Let me go over the rules, because they're actually very, very simple. At least my little brain thinks they are. So, to begin with, each player, and I'm playing with 6 players, gets a pile of money. It's determined by the amount of players. And 6 players, it's $50 each. And each one's going to get a special card, which is basically a bonus action. And I'm going to give one of those. Did I get the wrong cards here? Yeah, I gave the wrong cards. These are track building cards. Here are the special cards. One of them has a 1 on it. They're dealt out randomly like in an XX game. And the 1 card is sort of the priority deal type position. Okay. And at the beginning of the game, 5 of the 6 companies, everything except the Cordoba in this one, are auctioned off. You can pay whatever you like for them. And you're auctioning off a single share. They go in order. First the Sud, then the Norte. By the way, this is, I believe, in Argentina. Yeah, Buenos Aires. Then the Pacifico, just to jump around in order to confuse things. Then we go to the Oeste and the Central. And obviously, those are largely just locational. Their company treasuries or such are actually integrated into the board, the stocks. You put any cash on the company. Again, it's like an XX game. Corporations have their own treasury that's separate from what the player has. As each of these is bid on, the player within fairly strict restrictions who puts the highest bid, and you have to bid higher than the previous bid. So for example, the first player could say, I'm bidding 25 bucks on a share of the Sud. He could bid 0. He could win with 0. Then the Sud gets no cash. But if he bids 25 and nobody wants to bid higher than that, he buys a share of the Sud for 25 bucks. The Sud has 25 bucks. It gets a free track lay. In the case of the Sud, it is gotta be, we'll base it out of here. This is out of, I don't remember where is it, yeah, out of Buenos Aires to La Flores or Maipú. Who's Poo? So it's going to build one of these two lines, and that's marked by using the marker right on the map. Map's at least erasable, unlike this thing or this thing, which are both made out of. This is kind of made out of a cardstock type stuff, as are the cards. I'm going to use a little heavier paper. Okay. So you go around, and I believe the previous winner, yeah, the winner of the previous stock opens up the auction on the next stock. So as you go through the order, whoever buys the share of the Sud gets to offer the next one, the Norte, up for share, and gets the advantage of being able to bid first. It's an advantage because whatever he bids, no one else can bid that and still win it. So, and as usual, I'm going to play clockwise is counterclockwise. I rotate around in the wrong order. This is just how I do my solitaire. Alright. The game ends on the 9th pay dividends. I think we're on the 0th pay dividends. When I do the first one, I'll mark it with this die. You're supposed to mark it off somewhere on the map. Oh, there they are! Excellent. So I don't need the die. So you just cross them off on the on there as they happen. Okay. So after one of each share sells, and the Cordoba does not start now until the city of Cordoba is reached. After each share sells, we go to the start of the game. Now, at the start of the game, who gets to go first? I believe the person who bought the last share. Yes. The person who bought the first share of the Central, for whatever price, could be 0, gets the first action. And to get an action, they get a pile of cards. And there are 3 types of actions, and you can pick one of them with your card. When you pick it, you put it in the expended action box, and that one's no longer available for this dividend round. Of course, there are other copies of the same card. Different options. Construct track. Construct track says, I'm going to spend $5 of my corporation's money to draw a line from somewhere where I already exist to somewhere else. And there's some restrictions on that. For example, where there's an arrow, you can only build it in one direction. So San Nicolas, you can't build from Rosario to San Nicolas. You have to build from Buenos Aires to San Nicolas and then on. $5 of the company's treasury, not your own money. You can spend $15 to build a double track. They have to be contiguous. So you could build here and here for $15. Sorry, I didn't really show that. But you can build both these connections and pay $15. Okay. Such is. There are also regional builds. Now, I didn't look to see where these are. Regional track build. They're these things. These little red squares. Or thingies. I don't know what they are. If you're in this location, you can build the adjacent regional track build. Now, what does that cost you? See, this is hard because it's split into two prices. Ah, cost value. Okay. So it'll cost $25 if you're here to build the regional track build. And it adds $15 to your corporation's value. Now your corporation's value is, in addition to those, $5 per piece of track that's your color. That's all it's worth. Whatever that means. Value doesn't mean much in this because you can't sell your shares or anything. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. Your shares aren't worth that particularly. That's just some sort of determination for when shares do go for sale, the minimum price that they can go for. All right, so that's one of the options you can do. And it increases income of your company, and I'll explain what the income is in a moment, and it increases the value of your corporation, both of which can be determined various ways. This track seems to indicate that you keep track of both on here, but the pieces that came with the game, one of which oddly was a square and the rest look like crayon rails pieces, and I have no idea whether these are what you're supposed to get. But the fact that the square matches the Cordoba color and these match the other colors almost leads me to believe that it's the case. Anyway, you can keep track of income with these counters. If I had more counters, I could keep track of value as well. I don't know how much both of these are worth keeping track of. Certainly, calculating the income continuously would be a pain in the butt. But then again, calculating the value might be too. So I may need to fish out some more pieces. Okay. So where were we? Yes, we're at the... So we already figured out what the value is going to be. $5 per track plus the second number on these. And I don't think anything else affects it. The income that you collect is based on the value of locations that you hit. And we have to hit the next thing, which is develop settlements, to fully understand that. So that's the next kind of card. That's one of these blue cards. That's another action you can take. If you want to do that, you can play it, and the card, and then, for construct track, whoever picks that card has to pick a railroad to construct the track. The person who owns the most shares of that railroad actually makes the decisions of what track to construct. They must, I believe, construct one for $5. If they don't have $5, they can't be picked. If no one can be picked, it's a wasted card play. Okay, let's go to the settlements. The person who picks the settlement card gets to pick one settlement on the board, and settlements are pretty much all these locations, including the big metros and the cities. And what are they worth? Well, you get to mark one for free, and you mark it by kind of putting a dot in it or whatever. And that gives it an increase in value. Initially, they have a value which is tracked by the undeveloped settlements chart. That's how much income they produce. If you put a dot in them, their income goes up, and you'll see mines produce better. Yeah, they get the better growth than anything else. Towns don't get much. Cities don't get much. Ports go up 2. Mines go up 4. So developing mines that you're using will increase your income of your railroad faster. Other things you can develop are the metro areas, which you mark off boxes in order. So for example, the 5 box is the initial value of Buenos Aires. If you mark that off, it's now worth 6. And that's for all railroads that use that. Now, the total value of the income for all these railroads is what they connect. And this is kind of trickier than you might think. So for example, if I had track from La Plata to Buenos Aires without any markers, it would be $2 for La Plata plus $5 for Buenos Aires. That's worth $7. If I also had track to San Nicolas, that would be worth an additional $5 plus $1. So this track would be worth 13 bucks. Okay, a little different from the 18XX concept of running a single line. You're running trains essentially between each connection, so each link in the connection is worth something. So locations on both sides can count double if you run through them, as it were. And they can count more than double. For example, if you had links all over Buenos Aires, you would get that 5 many times. That's probably not too likely to happen. Okay. So you can develop a settlement for free when you play the settlement development card. You can also pay $3 from your cash to build a second settlement. Okay. Now there are limits to the metros developing. Buenos Aires has to have the highest income on the board out of all the metro areas. And Cordoba has to be larger than Tucumán. And Rosario has to be larger than Tucumán. Just to try to indicate a sort of development scheme for the whole board, as it were. And those are all your cities in the game, all your big metro areas. Okay. It's also possible now, in either of these cases, if there's only one kind of card left, then we'll have a dividend round. The third type is offer stock, and that's this orange one. When you offer stock, you pick a specific share of railroad stock from one company that's in the corporate treasury, or you can pick one of your shares. And if you pick your own share, you're not involved in the bidding. If you pick one of the corporate shares, you get to start the bidding. The minimum bid is 1/5 of the railroad's value. Remember, the value is basically the amount of track times 5 plus whatever these are. If you buy a stock from a corporation, the cash goes in the corporation treasury, thereby giving it an influx of cash so it can build more track. On the other hand, if you buy it from a player, I believe it goes to the other player. Otherwise, it would be silly to sell. I doubt that people would be selling their own shares very often, but maybe you need to raise cash for something. I don't know. Seems foolish in general. Okay? Your special card, you begin with one of these. You can turn this in on your turn and say it's any one of these types of cards. And that allows you to conduct an action that maybe you wouldn't get an option to conduct otherwise. You can do that once per game. Cordoba. When somebody reaches Cordoba, the corporation starts, and one share is offered up for auction from the person who just built track to go there. And I don't think movement changes or anything like that. Cordoba has its own specific free track lay. Yes. They're able to build one of these two tracks. Okay? And they will be able to build one of them because even if you double laid out of Cordoba, one of them would be still open. Okay. Now, paying dividends. So every time that these cards run down so that there's only one type left, dividends are paid. How much are dividends? They are equal to the income of the corporation divided by 5, because there's 5 shares of stock. Round it up. Bang. That's it. What about the final payoff? Well, I didn't read this one. based on income value and any money. Okay. So here's the deal with the final payoff. Final payoff is a little different. In the 9th round, the final payoff is a little different from all the other dividend payouts. First of all, the value of the corporation is included. So you do get to sell your stock at value, at whatever it's evaluated at for the final round. And it's only, you also get your dividend income, and the total is divided only by the number of shares that are outstanding, i.e. stuff that the corporation holds doesn't get included in this. Now what I don't believe that money goes into the corporate treasury on the normal dividend payouts. That's not absolutely, yeah, I don't believe so. Okay, so let's explain the final round here. You count up the income that the corporation produces, you look at its value, you add the two, and you divide it by the number of shares in players' hands, and they each get that much money. And after each stock pays out, on the normal dividend rounds, you refresh the deck, the hand, and the next player gets to go. On the final one, you see who wins. That's it. Looks really interesting to me. Looks really like a stripped down, let's get this, to the simplest version of XX as we possibly can. What's missing from it? Stock value. Stock value is represented just as how much track a railroad's built. I think that's cool, but it doesn't at all represent the value that people think stock is worth. I had been having hopes when I first saw how this was, that the value of a corporation, and I may try to tinker and make rules for this, the value of a not on this play, the value of a corporation would be what it was last bid at, which is very similar to how a stock market really works, right? Hey, I'll pay $50 for that share. Nobody sells it. I'll pay $60 for that share. Okay, I'll sell it to you for 60. All right, well now the stock value is at 60. And the only game that I've seen that does that is something called Maxi Bourse, which is a terribly broken game because the mechanism by which the stocks end up getting sold fails completely, and one person can drive the value of a stock up. Well, in this you wouldn't have that option. You have limited cash for one thing. So you really couldn't you couldn't play with the stock values the way you could in Maxi Bourse. Also in Maxi Bourse, it's more than one share at a time. So you could make a bid on shares and then buy a whole bunch of them for a low bid, and then sell one off at a high, or buy one more at a high bid, and you've just increased your share value tremendously, and then you could declare victory, and that was really crappy. This is a totally different mechanism, and I think actually a pure stock market might work for valuation. Kind of an idea, because I've got such a stripped down game, what the hell? I might as well play with it in that way. Anyway though, this time I'm going to play by the pure rules and talk about it that way. And this should be kind of interesting, actually. All right, let's give it a shot. And boy, that was a long intro.